The night before you sign, you stand in the bathroom for 11 minutes. Not because you need to be there, because you don't know where else to put yourself. The mirror shows someone who made a decision 3 days ago and hasn't told his body yet. Your hands are steady, that's the part that unsettles you. You thought there'd be shaking. There isn't. Just a stillness that feels borrowed from somewhere you haven't been yet. Your father is in the next room. He hasn't said much since Tuesday. Not cold, not proud, something older than both of those. A man who came back from a desert with sand still in his boots and a flag on the mantle that nobody ever touched. He never explained the silence. You stopped asking at 14. Tonight you understand it wasn't silence at all. It was a door he didn't know how to open from his side. You're going to open it from yours. The recruiting office smells like coffee and carpet cleaner. The sergeant shakes your hand before you sit down. Not the handshake of a salesman. The handshake of someone who has already decided you belong somewhere specific. That handshake does something to your posture before you even realize it. The contract is longer than you expected. 3 signatures. 3 times your name in your own handwriting, smaller than you'd like, on a page that large. The pen clicks once when the sergeant caps it. Nobody speaks for a moment. Your mother cries on the drive home, not loudly. The kind of crying that happens behind sunglasses when the person believes you can't see it. You don't say anything. You watch the road. 3 weeks later, you're on a bus south. There's a drill sergeant at Fort Jackson who is going to say something to you in the first week. 1 sentence. You will hate him for it. You won't understand why he's right until you're repeating it to someone else. 10 years from now, in a different country, under a different sky. You don't know his name yet. His name is Staff Sergeant Doyle. 5'9". Feels like 6'5". Drinks his coffee black at 4:45 in the morning. Like the bitterness is a decision he makes every day on purpose. He does not learn your name for 2 weeks. You are a last 4. You are a bunk number. You are raw material that has not yet proven it deserves a name. The first thing Doyle says to you, not to the group, to you specifically on day 4, when your legs have already forgotten what rest feels like, is this. Your pain belongs to you. Your stopping belongs to everyone else. You hate him for it, not because it's wrong, because it lands somewhere true and you weren't ready for true yet. Fort Jackson in July is its own kind of punishment. The air sits on your chest before you even get outside. You run 5 miles before the sun finishes rising, and the clay beneath your boots turns the color of dried blood by afternoon. The first week, 3 men quit. You watch them pack. One of them cries. You don't judge him. You came close yourself on day 3 at 0300 when your hands were shaking from exhaustion and you couldn't remember a single reason you'd signed that paper. Then you remembered the handshake. You kept moving. Week 3, there's a moment during a collective punishment run. Somebody's bunk failed inspection. Somebody always fails inspection. And when the soldier next to you falls out of formation, he goes down on one knee. He looks up at you. You don't know him. You know his face the way you know the faces of 60 men you eat with and sweat with and haven't spoken to honestly yet. You reach down, he grabs your forearm, you pull. The formation doesn't stop for it, Doyle doesn't acknowledge it, but something shifts between the two of you that doesn't need language. By week 7, you understand what Doyle meant. Pain is personal. It lives inside your skin and nobody can take it from you. But the moment you stop, that belongs to the man running beside you. It belongs to his legs, his lungs, his next deployment. You don't stop. There's a man standing next to you at graduation in September. You've run beside him, eaten beside him, been punished alongside him for things neither of you did. You don't know yet that 5 years from now, in a different country, he will be the first person you call when something happens that you can't say out loud. He's standing right there. You march past your mother in her yellow blouse and you don't break stride, but you find her face. Fort Benning smells like red clay and burnt gunpowder and ambition that hasn't been tested yet. Advanced individual training is harder than basic in the ways that don't show up on any schedule. The physical training has a purpose now. Every mile has a destination. Every rep has a reason. You stop running to survive and start running to carry something. Weight on your back, men on your flanks, decisions on your shoulders that haven't arrived yet but are already in transit. You meet Marcus Webb on a Tuesday afternoon at the range. He's laughing, not nervous laughter, not the laughter of someone trying to look comfortable, the laughter of a man who has genuinely found something funny in a situation that everyone else is treating like a funeral. You watch him group 3 rounds inside a silver dollar at 300 meters. He does it without ceremony, without adjustment, like the rifle is an extension of a thought he's already finished having. You ask him how. He doesn't answer the question you asked. He answers the one underneath it. That evening at chow, he pushes a torn piece of paper across the table without looking at you, ripped from the back of a cigarette pack. 7 words in handwriting that leans hard to the right like it's always in a hurry. The army teaches fighting, thinking you bring yourself. You read it twice. You put it in your left breast pocket. You carry it there for 2 years before you copy it into a notebook. The paper itself you keep longer than that, longer than you'll admit to anyone. Kosovo comes in 1999. The 82nd deploys as a buffer, no combat, just presence, checkpoints, the slow machinery of deterrence wearing a human face. One afternoon, a girl of about 7 stands at the fence line of your checkpoint. She doesn't ask for anything. She doesn't speak. She watches you with the patience of someone who has learned that adults make decisions above her eye level. She stands there for 20 minutes. Then someone pulls her away by the hand and she's gone. You never see her again. You never stop wondering where she went. The same week, without discussing it with anyone, you re-enlist. Webb re-enlists the same day, different office. Neither of you finds out until after. You never talk about what that means. Some things work as language without needing words. Someone sets a coffee mug down too hard. That's the sound you remember, not the television, not the voices. The ceramic crack of a mug hitting a table in a room full of soldiers who have just stopped breathing at the same time. You look up, the screen shows a building with a hole in it that shouldn't be there. Then the second one happens live, and the room stays silent for 4 minutes. 4 minutes is longer than any march you've ever done. Then someone says, "We're going." He's right, he's completely right. And nobody argues because there's nothing to argue. The decision was made by someone else, in a different city, and it has already arrived here in this room, and all that's left is the doing. By 2002, you're in Kandahar province. The mountains here are brown and permanent and indifferent. They were here before Alexander, before the British, before the Soviets, who left their rusting equipment in the valley floors like monuments to the specific kind of arrogance that believes geography is a problem technology can solve. The mountains watched all of them leave. They're watching you too. Your interpreter's name is Darwood. You don't learn this by introduction. You learn it because on your first patrol, he walks 12 steps ahead of the formation, unarmed, into every alley before you reach it. You tell him he doesn't have to do that. He says, "If they see me first, they know this isn't my war. They think before they shoot." You don't have a response to that. You just make sure the men behind you know his name. 3 months in, at 0430, your team clears a compound on the edge of a dry riverbed, 2 rooms empty. The third is not. You make a decision in less than 1 second. The debrief afterward uses clean words. Threat neutralized. Rules of engagement followed. Justified. The words are accurate. Accuracy and cleanliness are not the same thing. You learn that distinction on the walk back to your bunk. You sit on the edge of your mattress as the base wakes up around you. You don't lie down. You don't write anything. You just sit there while the light outside the window changes color, and you think about the difference between a reflex and a choice, and whether that difference matters when the outcome is the same. It does matter. You're still working out why. Your signature on the report that morning feels different from every signature before it. Not heavier exactly, more permanent. Like something that has moved from the future into the past and cannot be revisited. You write Webb a letter. He's back at Bragg. Made staff sergeant. He asks how you're doing. You write back 2 words. "I'm here." You mean something more specific than that. You don't have the language for it yet. Officer candidate school does not break you. It already knows it can't. What it does instead is put you in rooms where the ceiling is low and the information is incomplete, and 2 bad options are the only options on the table, and then it watches how you breathe. You learned something in those 12 weeks that no field manual contains. Authority is not volume. It is not certainty. It is the willingness to make a call in the dark and own it completely, while remaining open to being wrong. Those 2 things feel like opposites. At this level, they are the same thing. Your mother pins the gold bar on your shoulder at graduation. You watch her hands. These are the same hands that tied your shoes when you were 5, that packed your lunch through 8 years of school in a town with 1 stoplight and no futures, that pressed a yellow blouse on the morning you marched past her in formation, and she didn't make make a sound because she was holding everything together behind sunglasses. Those hands are shaking slightly. You let them shake. You don't say anything, neither does she. Some ceremonies don't need narration. By 2006, you're in Anbar province, west of Baghdad. You command 32 soldiers, average age 21. You are 26, and the math of that responsibility sits behind your sternum every morning when you strap on your kit. The night before your first major convoy operation, Specialist Danny Okafor from Columbus, Ohio, pulls you aside. He's 22. He has a photograph of his daughter taped inside his helmet. He looks at you and asks, "Sir, if something happens tomorrow, how fast will you decide?" You say, "Fast enough." He nods, goes back to his bunk. The next morning en route mobile, a pressure plate detonates 2 vehicles behind yours. You are out of the MRAP before the dust settles. Okafor is conscious. Conscious means alive. Alive means everything. You get him medevaced in 18 minutes. He loses partial movement in 2 fingers. He goes home. 2 years later, he names his first son Daniel Marcus, the middle name after a man from Shreveport whose handwriting leans hard to the right, whose name you mentioned once on a night patrol when Okafor asked you who taught you to stay calm. You never forget that he remembered. If you've been in a room where a decision had to be made faster than thought, any version of that room and ways, leave something in the comments. We read every one. Then subscribe, because where this goes next, you need to already be here. Kunar province is nothing like Kandahar. Kandahar is flat suspicion, open ground where the threat comes from distance and patience. Kunar is vertical. Mountains that push against each other like arguments that never got resolved. Valleys so narrow they swallow sound and return it changed. You learn within the first week not to trust your ears here. A shot from the east sounds like it came from the west. The terrain is lying to you constantly and professionally. You study back. You read about the British campaigns in the 1840s, the Soviet occupation, the tribal structures that predate every border drawn by men who never stood in these valleys. Your soldiers ask why you spend your evenings with books instead of sleep. You tell them, the man who fired at us this morning has a grandfather who fired at someone else in this exact valley. If you don't know the valley, you don't know the fight. You know a symptom. One of your junior lieutenants, Maya Reeves, begins recording herself speaking Pashto at night. You hear it through the thin wall between your quarters. She replays the same phrases until the pronunciation stops sounding like an American trying. You never mention that you've heard it. 3 months later, the relationships she builds through those conversations map 2 ambushes that never appear on any intelligence report. You put her in for a commendation. It gets approved. You don't tell her about the wall. Near the Pech River, you're waiting for a translator when you hear a voice from the adjacent room that stops you mid-step. You stand in the doorway for 10 seconds before going in. 8 years. A different province, the same war. Darwood looks up from across the table. No surprise. No performance, just the nod of 2 people who have stood on dangerous ground together and don't need to explain what that means to each other. The village elder he's translating for tells you his people want schools, not soldiers. He says it without anger, with the patience of a man who has delivered this message before and measured his expectations accordingly. You write it in your notebook, word for word. You include it in your after-action report. Nothing changes because of it. You write it anyway because some things deserve to exist on record, even when the record changes nothing. That report lands on a desk in Washington in November. A lieutenant colonel you have never met reads it twice. He underlines 1 paragraph. He doesn't know your name yet. That is about to change. The Pentagon has 17 miles of corridors. You find this out personally on your first morning because you take a wrong turn after the D-ring and arrive 4 minutes late to a briefing with a 3-star general. You don't apologize. You explain. The general looks at you for exactly 2 seconds and says, "Nobody in this building cares why. They care what happens next." It is the last time you are late to anything. Army G3, the Operations Directorate. Your job is contingency planning, scenarios that may never happen and must be ready if they do. You work with Air Force colonels who think in airspace, and Navy commanders who think in ocean lanes, and defense intelligence analysts who think in probabilities that keep them up at night. Nothing moves fast here. You are trained to act, to assess and move, to make the call and live with it while already making the next one. Here you analyze, you brief, you revise, you brief again. For 6 months, you carry a low-grade frustration that sits behind your eyes like pressure without release. Then one morning you're standing over a map and something shifts. Every point on that map is a place where someone is standing right now. Boots on actual ground. Actual weather, actual threat. The soldiers you led in Ramadi and Kunar, their exact equivalents are out there at this moment, and what gets decided in this building today determines what they face next month. The map stops being abstract, it never goes back to being abstract. You stop being frustrated, you start being precise. A brigadier general named Patricia Odomtele leaves a memo on your desk one afternoon. No name on it, no signature. One sentence in handwriting that belongs to someone who has made the same point many times before and has stopped needing credit for it. Write less. Say exactly what you mean. People remember precision longer than they remember volume. You tape it inside the cover of your notebook. Below Webb's 7 words from the cigarette pack. 2 different people. 2 different decades. The same lesson arriving from different directions. You are promoted to Lieutenant Colonel 18 months ahead of your peer group. The night the notification arrives, you sleep without difficulty. No celebration, no anxiety. Just the clean recognition that the next level will require something that doesn't exist in any manual you've read so far. You don't know what to call it yet. Romania in winter is clean, in a way that Afghanistan never was. No dust, no compounds at 0430, no voices carrying across dry riverbeds in languages you're still learning to read. Just cold air and flat light and a 50 kilometers of buffer between NATO's eastern flank and a question that nobody in any briefing room will say out loud directly. That absence of obvious threat is the thing that makes it dangerous. When there's nothing shooting at you, the body relaxes in ways the mind shouldn't allow. You spend your first month at the Romanian deployment, making sure your battalion understands the difference between peace and the pause before something that isn't peace. That difference lives in maintenance schedules and readiness drills and the specific discipline of treating a quiet morning like it owes you nothing. Fort Campbell's 800 soldiers, the Screaming Eagles. This is the last command where you know every sergeant major by name, where you can smell the mud of the training grounds and feel the institution as something personal rather than architectural. You understand this without being told. You hold it carefully. One night on a ridge outside Constanza, your sergeant major stands beside you, looking east across the Black Sea. He has 26 years in. He has seen things that give his silences specific weight. He asks without looking at you. You think they'll actually come. You watch the water for a moment. Doesn't matter, you say. We act like they will. That's the job. He nods slowly, the nod of a man who needed to hear it confirmed, rather than told. There's a difference. You've learned to recognize which one you're being asked for. In February 2022, you are stateside when Russia crosses the Ukrainian border. You're in a budget meeting. Someone slides a phone across the table. The screen shows columns of armor moving through terrain you stood in 36 months earlier. Nobody returns to the budget. You look out the window at a parking lot in Virginia and feel, for the first time in years, the specific frustration of a man trained for the field sitting in a building while the field moves without him. You brief congressional staffers on readiness that week. You use plain language. You don't speculate beyond what the data supports. An aide tells your escort officer afterward that you were the first person in 3 months who came in to inform rather than impress. You file that next to Odomtele's memo. Somewhere in El Paso tonight, a 20-year-old named Torres is deciding something. You don't know his name, you don't know his face. But one morning, not long from now, he will pull a vehicle through a base gate and look at you in the rearview mirror, and you will see with absolute clarity exactly who you were the night before. You signed your name 3 times on a page that felt too large for your handwriting. He's already in motion, you just haven't met yet. The ceremony is at the Pentagon. Your mother is in the front row wearing yellow, not a new yellow, the same specific shade she wore at Fort Jackson when you marched past in formation and found her face without breaking stride. The same shade she pressed and hung and apparently kept for occasions that require her to show up as something more than a woman watching. You don't ask about it. She doesn't explain. There are languages that work without vocabulary, and this is one of them. When the chief of staff reaches for your shoulder to pin the star, his fingers make contact with the fabric, and something happens in the space between 1 second and the next. Not a memory exactly, more like a compression. Fort Jackson in July. The smell of Georgia clay on a 40-degree morning, Doyle's hand hitting your shoulder on day 4, not gently, the way he made every point, with exactly the force required and nothing beyond it. 2 hands, 2 men, 31 years apart, the same weight arriving from opposite directions. You think about Darwood walking unarmed into alleys because he understood something about visibility that took you months to learn. You think about Danny Okafor in a kitchen in Columbus showing you 2 fingers that don't close all the way and laughing about the other 8. You think about a girl of 7 at a checkpoint fence in Kosovo who watched you for 20 minutes and asked for nothing and got nothing and was pulled away by a hand you never saw the face behind. You think about all of it for exactly as long as it takes to pin a star. Then you move forward. United States Army Pacific, 36 countries. The largest geographic command on Earth. You are assigned as Deputy Commanding General for Operations, and you report on a Monday morning to a 2-star general whose office smells like coffee, and whose laugh you recognize before you see his face. Same laugh, same lean, still the best shot in any room he enters. Marcus Webb from Shreveport, Louisiana looks up from his desk and doesn't look surprised. Neither are you. Some things were always going to end up here. He stands. You don't shake hands immediately. There's a beat first. The beat of 2 people who have been in parallel motion for 25 years and are standing in the same room again and both understand what that means without needing to name it. Then he says, walking past you toward the window, not stopping, not turning. You know how to fight. You know how to lead. Now learn to be patient in a way that actually costs you something. You have to take 2 quick steps to catch the end of the sentence. You open your notebook. The 7th one since 1998. You find a blank page near the back. You write it down. Below Webb's 7 words from a cigarette pack. Below Odomtail's single sentence. Below the things Doyle said that you hated before you understood. The page is getting full. There is still room. You are 53 years old and you still wake up at 0500. Not because the Army requires it. The Army stopped requiring anything from you personally a long time ago. You wake up because 35 years of 4:45 mornings have rewired something at a level that no retirement will ever reach. Your body made a decision in July at Fort Jackson and never reversed it. You run 3 miles, you drink your coffee black. The way Doyle drank it, you noticed that detail once at 18 and never lost it. Some things attach themselves to you at the exact right moment and become permanent without asking permission. You command United States Army Forces Command, FORSCOM, responsible for the training, readiness, and deployment of over 750,000 soldiers across every component. Active, Reserve, National Guard. You sit in a chair where decisions touch every level you have ever occupied. The recruit who couldn't find the right door at Fort Jackson. The sergeant sitting on a bunk edge watching the light change color outside a Kandahar window. The lieutenant standing in 18 minutes of dust and adrenaline on Route Mobile, making a call that a 22-year-old from Columbus trusted him to make correctly. You remember all of them because you were all of them. In the mornings during those 3 miles, you think about names. Not all of them, specifically the ones where you hesitated before signing an evaluation. The ones where the right call and the easy call were pointing in different directions and you had to choose which one you could live with. Those names stay with you in a way the easy signatures never do. That is what the stars actually cost, not the ceremonies, not the hours. The weight of names you hesitated over and signed anyway. You testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee in the spring. 12 senators. Cameras positioned to catch whatever can be used later. Some questions are serious. Some are architecture for a soundbite. You answer all of them the same way, clearly, directly, without performance. One senator asks what it takes to build an army capable of winning wars that don't have names yet. You pause. Not because you don't know, because the true answer started in a bathroom mirror at 18 with steady hands and borrowed stillness. The night before, 3 signatures on a page that felt too large. You say, Senator, it starts with someone deciding that something larger than themselves is worth showing up for. Every year, in towns we'll never visit, by people we'll never meet. Our only job is to make sure that when they arrive, we have been worthy of the decision they made. The room holds its breath for a moment. You mean every word. There is a plaque on the wall of your FORCOM office. You had it made from a torn piece of paper that spent 2 years in a breast pocket before it spent 20 more in the front page of a notebook. The paper itself is in a drawer. The ink has faded to the color of old water. The words are still legible. The Army teaches fighting, thinking you bring yourself. Below that, in smaller letters, Marcus Webb. Corporal, 82nd Airborne, in Fort Benning, Georgia, 1998. He has 2 stars now. Specialist Torres drives you through the gate every morning. 20 years old. From El Paso, he watches everything and says very little. And you recognize the specific quality of that attention because you aren't yourself once. On a bus going south in July, when the world was still something that was happening to you rather than something you were responsible for. One morning, you tell him, the best thing you can do right now is watch how people make decisions and file it away. He looks at you in the rearview mirror and nods. You don't tell him that someone should have said that to you at his age. You don't tell him that the notebook in your left breast pocket is the 7th one since 1998, and that somewhere near the front of the first one, pressed flat between the pages, is a piece of paper torn from a cigarette pack with 7 words in handwriting that leans hard to the right. You don't tell him any of that. You just watch the road. Some things are better carried forward than explained. The bus left Fort Jackson 35 years ago. It didn't stop. It just changed who was on it.